Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you day 250 of Russian invasion into Ukraine, with Olexiy Arestovych, Lieutenant Colonel, advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Monday, October 31st. Time in Kiev is 2 minutes past 10 p.m. In Moscow, it's 11. It's the first stream that we're doing with Olexiy on winter time that Europe converted to. As a reminder, Moscow does not switch to winter time, so our difference with Russia is increased a little bit. Okay, day 250 with Olexiy. Glad that you're back. Good connection, great sound. Happy and cheerful and healthy. Over 30,000 of you clicked the like button. Please continue doing that. Please continue sharing the stream. The more active you are, it does help us to promote it and to get new viewers from new areas. Don't be shy, write where you're watching us from. And do not forget to subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovich, and if you are listening or watching that in English, subscribe to the Privateer Station as well. Alright, let's start with the map. What happened in the day that you were gone? So, Russian saturation of the fronts with mobilized troops finally achieved a certain result. They have about 100,000 present on the front, and that slowly got reflected on the front. So, they managed to stabilize the front line. Second reason for that is the slow walking of ammo and armor supplied to Ukraine by our Western allies. It's done the way it is done, a bit slow to our liking, but we're grateful for whatever we get. And the other reason is that Russia is, indeed got enough refitting from newly mobilized, and they added them to the cadre military detachments that were still present, and you can see they also activated more near Bakhmut. You can see how many arrows are there. They also tried to attack Marinka as well, and down south they went to Novomikhailivka and Pavlovka. You can see the two arrows, the lowest one from the right to left, and then there is one from bottom to top, that's Bugledar. So they're trying to attack Pavlovka. They giddily announced that Pavlovka is taken, and this is lying, this is incorrect. We are fighting next to that settlement, and in the evening they declared that tomorrow will continue, but we'll see how much more troops they have, because Russian commanders do not change the way they fight. The moment they get somewhat advantageous numbers of troops, and instead of, at that time, instead of thinking how to use them better, they just throw them into the fight in the usual manner. And to answer that, why are they doing that? It is because everything is forced by a political will, not by military necessity or strategy. And we know how they do their offensive operations. Very soon we expect they'll run out of personnel, and they might bring more mobilized people to the front, but they're running out of heavy armor, and it's a bit more difficult for them to do anything effective with less means. So, are their losses increasing as well? Well, they're trying to attack Bakhmut in the same manner, with human waves, about 8 attacks before lunch. And as we see, the line did move away from Bakhmut. So how is that happening? That they're throwing wave after wave, and the line is moving further to the right. Tell us, I don't know how that could happen. Well, it's simple, really. They send more and more troops. We destroy their waves of attacks. Again, this is not too big of a distance on the front that we're changing the line to. It's 200, 100 yards. But still, after each of these waves, there is a bit of a lull on the front, and they're liking people, so we slowly creep up on them. What about Kherson? There is a little bit of tactical fighting for a more advantageous hill or better forested area. But what we can talk about is that we are more saturated with artillery, and we're hitting their warehouses, their artillery, their operating bases, and whatever river crossings they establish. So this is another milestone day since the 1st of October, when they launched over 50 missiles a day. 44 of them were shot down. It's almost 90%. Ukrainian air defense worked remarkably well today. One of them was shot pretty much right above us here, and was rather noisy. That is just a minor detail. What's important... Oh, hang on. I'm losing my thought here. What I wanted to say is that they are still targeting electric substations and transformers, and also hydro energy stations, and civilian critical infrastructure items such as water supply lines. So we have questions from our population asking, hey, how, if only 6 of them came through, how come the damage is noticeable? How come the electricity went out? How come the water is not working? Well, once again, those that fly through, very often they hit strategic points, the ones that are in charge of providing energy to large areas, so, or the ones where they can cause more damage. They're targeting. They're trying to target certain civilian infrastructure, and when they succeed, you definitely feel it. So we're working on repairs that. There's no conspiracy theories. It's literally just 6 missiles that came through out of 50. So there's no conspiracy. There was not more. It's literally they just hit rather successfully certain items, and we're working to fix that. So that achievement that you guys shot 44 out of 50, tell us more about your success on that side. Well, at the beginning we managed to shot down, we're shooting maybe 30%, then we got to 60%, so now we're at 90. That's definitely both experience and additional equipment that we were provided. Also, cruise missile is a very specific weapon. It flies on a certain route, and it's difficult to create something really new. Although they did try to oversaturate our air defenses again, but failed at doing so. They couldn't use the element of surprise because we do see strategic bombers coming up from their airports. And they also failed to oversaturate our equipment because we do have some of the Western systems in our defense, not the old USSR type defenses, but actually newer ones. So, for example, Arestovych, the German system, had 100% effectiveness today. They shot down everything that they could reach. So it is important for us to continue working with our allies to get more systems to cover our skies. The more systems we have, the more effective we are at shooting down their missile barrages. And okay, let's go talk about Putin now, who is trying to make statements and who was talking today live. Mark, I'm thinking he may actually mimic us a little, and that he probably will be going daily now with discussing the matters on the front, just like you and I. Oh, I don't think he'll matter. Or he managed because he's old. We're younger. Mark, don't worry. He's got doubles. They can take turns. Funny. Okay, so today he said that they linked today's missile barrage as a retaliation to the attack in Sevastopol. So, do we know what was downed? What did you guys sink in Sevastopol? We did not sink anything. We have not officially acknowledged any of that attack. We're still figuring out what's the damage there, but judging by the anger in their today's retaliation, it probably did hit them rather painfully. This is one of the versions that we actually did cause some pain there, or whoever did. Okay, so the grain deal. They announced that they're leaving the grain deal. Erdogan said, well, farewell Russia, will continue ferrying Ukraine boats or other boats from Ukraine. We have agreement with Ukraine and United Nations and will be providing cover for these convoys. And he's saying that Russian agreement is not too important. We are the guarantors of that supply, and we're still going to guarantee the supply of grain going safely to the African countries. So Putin, upon hearing that, he's paddling back. He's saying, oh, we just slowed down. We did not completely quit the deal. We just paused our participation in that. Do you think that's his reaction to Erdogan's statement? I think so. He didn't really have much wiggle room, because at first they rather clearly stated they're leaving the deal and saying that you guys face the consequences. That tells a lot about the country who is eager to endanger the lives of 100 million people dependent on the Ukrainian grain in northern Africa. And when Erdogan took a harder position, who basically is a guarantor of that supply, Putin realized that that may be painful. And Erdogan, I guess, was in the point where he promised to provide cover for these grain convoys to northern Africa. So, upon a quick analysis, they realized that their best strategy is to continue supplying. And they're eager to face the possible confrontation with Russia in the Black Sea versus the possible fallout of countries in the northern Africa being upset with Erdogan's failing and Turkey failing to provide that grain trade route. So, also, Turkish fleet is about 5 times stronger than anything Russia has in the Black Sea. So it's more of a political decision that they're trying to stay firm, and they don't really. That's what they projected outwards. They said, we don't care about Russian participation. We'll continue with grain supplies, and basically consider that is almost impossible to destroy or interrupt these trade routes with grain from Ukraine to northern Africa. It would be nice if United Nations would also pitch in and say something about that side of the conflict, and perhaps called upon the countries involved, the countries in the region, to provide additional cover for the vessels with grain going to Africa. But it's probably too tall of an ask to expect UN chiming in so quickly. But at least Erdogan could be commended. He decided to stay firm. So you do not think Moscow will be strong enough to attack Ukrainian vessels with grain? Well, they're not Ukrainian en masse. They're mostly international. I cannot see them attacking these vessels. Also, good luck doing that when Turkey is providing military cover. Secretary of State in the United States also stating today that attack in Sevastopol on the military targets should not be a cause for withdrawal or interruption of the grain deal. Well, Russia doesn't care about that grain deal, right? But at the same time, in the West, they realize that It's 100 million people's lives at stake, so they will provide enough cover, enough support for that process to continue. And all these Russian statements about being upset, whichever of the Putin's doubles got a bad day today about that Sevastopol attack, they are legitimate targets. Need to realize they are legitimate targets, and they need to live with that. At the same time, they also do not like Ukraine selling grain to the international market, and they want to cut off that monetary support to Ukraine because these sales provide a lot of profit for Ukraine that can be used for repairs, for fulfilling internal monetary obligations, and perhaps for even purchasing more weapons. At the same time, Russian fertilizers are not being sold in the market now. Countries are not really buying them, and they are trying to play a card and say, well, we don't like that, we will withdraw. They're hoping to ignite the second Arab Spring and maybe uprising and maybe cause more hundreds of thousands of refugees flooding Europe. And that's what Russia pretty much officially stated. They are not against such a scenario. And Russian leadership in that statement about the grain basically blatantly told the peoples of the Middle East, well, guys, sorry, you'll have to die. I hope people of the Middle East and the other countries will evaluate that statement properly. So there was another statement that Istanbul agreements, Istanbul formal negotiations route is dead, and our missiles strikes on Kiev are the consequences of that, because Istanbul doesn't give us desired result, said Vasily Bold Balls Nebenza, that's what I call him, a Russian representative in the United Nations. So, do you think they're getting realistic? They start to realize that Erdogan and Turkey is just milking them, is not going to help them to reach Zelensky and make him sit down at the table of negotiations? Nobody will ever make Zelensky to negotiate with Putin. The decision was made. It is also supported by Ukraine Security Council, affirmed. And the only way we can talk to another president of Russia after Putin would be withdrawal of troops and giving out the military criminals to Ukraine and organizing the process of reparations. And any attempts to conclude this conflict differently will face a lot of resistance from us and from our allies. So he also stated, Putin's translation is still going, broadcast, they're still talking. So he's saying that mobilization is over, we put a dot here, we mobilized enough troops. I would want to add a caveat here, one should not believe his regime, they're always lying, so whenever they say they're done, they're still continuing to mobilize people, they're still continuing to carry out the notices. Maybe not in Moscow, but in other cities of country. Why do you think he feels it's important to highlight that in his speech? Because soon he'll have to announce mobilization again. After they lose enough troops on the front, they'll have to continue. I think he's trying to alleviate the internal stress in the society, because public in Russia are very disappointed, very upset about mobilization, especially now with the losses messing up and them getting the notes of their family members dying. So there is a lot of pressure on the system in the middle of Russia, and if they will continue mobilizing, the pressure will only increase. So they're trying to alleviate that, at least temporarily. And as an example, there was 232nd Detachment that just fled and ran from their positions. They were intercepted only 15 miles to the east from that. near Svatova area, and when they were stopped and arrested, they basically said, our commanders are drunk as fuck and we need to eat. Nobody brought us food for several days. They were actually captured when they were trying to obtain some food from the local population. And that all happened after we were hitting that battalion for 2 days with artillery. 2 days was enough. They turned and ran. Unlike the Russian cadre military near Kiev, who were standing there for a month, for 30 days under intensive artillery fire from us. So that's what I mentioned before. They will be running. They are not prepared. They don't know how to behave under fire, and they will start running, leaving parts of the front. And Russian command, in my opinion, will soon regret bringing these newly mobilized people to the front, and that's what we'll try to provide them with. We'll try to make sure they all face enough artillery. Do you know how you need to run to leave your position 15 miles, how fast you need to be? It only reminds me of Matros Debenka, who ran from Narva to Samara back in the early 20th century, and that's the day, at the end, by a funny twist of fate, became the day of Russian army, the 23rd of February. These ran only for 15 miles, but that's not the first and not the last time when they're doing that. Okay, 380, almost 382,000 watching us live. 80,000 click the like button. Thank you everybody for coming to watch and join us today. Sorry about the difference in time. It is winter time and Russia stays in the same time. Europe switched to winter time. This is somewhat affecting the cadence of our streams. For some people, it becomes a little too late to watch us at 11 p.m. But at the same time, Russia is big, and it's important for us that all the territories, including the eastern ones, do watch us, even not live. Make sure they get, if you have family there, relatives, friends there, make sure you send them links to our streams so they know what is going on the front. And do not forget to subscribe, to click that bell button. Okay, so today more interesting messages coming, and there's screams of bloody murder and other condemnations from different users in social media about the voting of Ukraine against Israel in the United Nations. I also think that United Nations is basically like a postal stamp society. They don't really affect things much, so it at least provides a public forum for screams and discussion, and that's what they're kind of doing there. So all this coming is on the heels of appeals of Ukrainian foreign affairs, Ukrainian politicians to Israel to help and work together on the current threats. So what do you think about that voting that happened in the United Nations? I think this voting was a very big mistake. How did that occur? Do you know how it happened? I don't know exactly about technicalities how it happened, but I can suspect. The thing is that Ukraine generally inherits the USSR major positions on certain things, like non-proliferation of nuclear arms. And we followed these certain general positions back since 1991, and our intent was to stay stable, to stay mature, to fight for support certain causes in the world, and we just continued doing that. I don't know if they forgot to think of that, of our relations with Israel, if they just forgot to realize and analyze what this voting will do. I think they nominally voted, as usual, against the non-nuclear proliferation. And this, sadly, this happened right after, 3 days after President Zelensky spearheaded efforts to reestablish closer links and closer ties with Israel. Our foreign diplomacy failed so miserably in the United Nations. All Europe voted present, Canada and the United States voted against, and Ukraine amazingly asking Israel for weapons, for support. votes against Israel potentially getting nuclear weapons. So Israeli society is in uproar, especially on the verge of elections coming. The voting was very formal, so it is not a pressing issue. Ukrainian foreign politics, we could have just voted present. We did not need to vote against. Is it such a big mistake indeed? Mark, it is a big mistake. If you are trying to work with an ally, trying to work a new path forward with a new ally, you do not vote like that. For me, those who done it, they basically cut our president political line. He's working hard and his office is working hard, and all of a sudden they're getting a surprise hit from their own members. So if I was the president, I would be digging deeper, trying to figure out who is in charge, who was responsible, who made that decision, how that decision was made. This is very short-sighted politics for any country, not just for Ukraine. Because that voting is formal. It's repeated year to year. It's like Christmas. It just goes annually. And the real politic is happening right now. The real relations are happening now. The real contracts and negotiations are happening now. And to trample the real decisions and the real perspectives that could have been deepened, that could have been strengthened, this is worse than a crime. That's a mistake. I think this is a colossal mistake of Ukrainian diplomacy, and I hope it will be corrected one way or another. And those excuses some people try to post in our Telegram channels and social media, some people were saying that so-called experts of Ukrainian-Israeli relations, they were saying, let's figure out, perhaps Israel is not such a close friend to us, and Ukraine, facing the nuclear threat, should vote for non-proliferation because Ukraine can become the victim of a nuclear attack. This is a very incoherent and weak position. It's probably an attempt to patch the hole made by somebody in the United Nations, some of our representatives there. And I hope that Israelis will understand us, will understand that we realize our mistakes and we're trying to fix that. I do hope that people realize that United Nations these days doesn't really have any practical application. They're really like a postal stamp collectors meeting, but there are ways to strengthen relations between Israel and Ukraine in other ways. It is still somewhat a hindrance, Mark. We need to address that because it is difficult to start building relations, to continue growing some military aspects of that or intel aspects of that. And the moment we actually started doing that, when our intel services exchanged information, when we started some technical cooperation, this is a big hindrance, such a voting. And I want to use our platform to turn to our Israeli friends that, sorry, this is a mistake, this is a sincere mistake. We have not thought out the consequences, and please stay wiser. Please do not take it at face level. Stay wiser. Please understand our voting not as an official position, but more as a political inertia. So I do appeal to you to please forgive us, forgive our country for that voting, and we'll do our best to correct that, to remedy that situation. All these questions should be negotiated. There should be some roadmap, and I understand Zelensky cannot travel too much these days, but there definitely is a way for him to talk to Israeli leadership to figure out a path forward, because I do not see any future behind these United Nations resolutions. They're weak. They cannot preclude Israel from getting somewhere. It's just if you can avoid voting, you should avoid voting, right? Especially while there is war going on. War is war, and here it's not going down to United Nations concerns and all that. It's going to be estimated later the right value. And Mark, we need to remember making these decisions in nations and anywhere that we are now facing a common enemy. We're facing Iran. And we finally started working better with Israel. We finally started exchanging technical personnel and advisors and figuring ways to cooperate. And we're basically making something good out of it, and then somebody brought a spoonful of crap and threw in the middle. So I hope we'll be wise enough to clean this up and to make sure we do not make these stupid mistakes, just silly mistakes going forward. And I think and I hope it is literally just because we are tired and we let this slip under the radar since we've voted like that for 28 years. And this is basically a continuation of diplomatic heritage of Soviet Union for nuclear non-proliferation, which is funny in a way that that Soviet Union was fighting for that while building the biggest arsenal of nukes in the world. So that's like a post-Soviet burp coming out. Okay, let's talk about Belarus. We have been live for almost 30 minutes, and Lukashenko announced a new meeting with Putin. Different sources talk about some preparatory actions to possible military activity, maybe cutting supply lines from Poland and the West and the Western Ukraine. In your opinion, the northwestern side of Ukraine-Belarus border, do you think it's getting more actual? Do you think it deserves more attention? Because, there are perspectives. Russia has more mobilized troops. Do you think they can throw more people there? Is it a danger? Mark, before you can throw these 200,000 mobilized troops, you need to dress and get them shoes and give them enough equipment. Because when they're sitting in camps right now with maybe armed with machine guns and AKs, that's about it. Their future is very foggy. Whatever they supplied to Belarus right now is under 10,000. It is absolutely not enough to do any offensive operations on any of the directions. There, at each of those directions, you need to have at least 35,000 troops. So, Russia, aided with Belarus, appears that they are trying to prepare these possible actions. How soon they'll be ready is difficult to tell. It definitely will take longer than a month, probably at least a couple months. And now, in time frame of this war, 2 months is about a quarter of this war overall length. So that's a long period. And it's too early probably to say that they're actively targeting something. They're just taking some measures to possibly escalate in that direction. Although today to threaten Kiev or to threaten Zhytomyr or Volenskaya direction, it is a very non-trivial task. Are they trying? Yeah, they're doing some activities there. Is it a real threat? No, not yet. So you think in this regard, nothing has changed in a more dangerous way on that part of the front. And of course, we are not sleeping there too. We have our own training, we're preparing territorial defense, we're preparing fortified areas, we're adding mines on the roads, and these are effective measures that stopped Russian initial offensive onto Ukraine. And if you do it right, then a small river, which is just 30 yards wide, becomes a very significant hurdle on the way of advancing army, which they cannot overcome. Oh, by the way, Mark and dear viewers, did you hear those messages about some bad smoking in Pskov region? Say again, I have not read that. 4 helicopters K-52 burnt down in Pskov airport. When did that happen? I have never left the streams room. I haven't read news today. Today, it happened today, and it shows again that it's very dangerous to smoke in military installations. Pskov region is pretty far from Ukraine. It's like north west. It's pretty far from the border. Yeah, that just highlights once again that those posts by fire marshal, no smoking. That's very important posts. And they officially published that there were 2 helicopters damaged. In reality, 4 of them got destroyed. Imagine what a lucky cigarette it was. And we're discussing that because it came out officially in the official news in Ukraine. So I heard, yeah, we keep hearing that Ukraine may get some UAVs made in Ukraine with rather far reach. Mark will talk about them once they appear. We can discuss them now. Well, are there official statements about them being used? Okay, I see what you mean. And what if they can fly all the way to Pskov? Well, yeah, those UAVs, it's crazy. They're just flying in all different directions. Right, and people are smoking and throwing cigarettes everywhere. Okay, I understand. So we've been live for 36 minutes. Let's address one more thing today. Summit is getting closer. G20 is getting closer and closer. President Zelensky said that he will have an option to make a statement there. Probably he will not go there physically, but he will connect. I don't know if Putin will make an online statement, but Zelensky definitely is going to make his statement on this meeting, and I suspect he will call upon G20 to exclude Russia from their ranks. And I think this is a right message. Why? Because Putin himself, I'm also watching the transcripts of that finished press conference that they did. Putin said that European Union countries are busy with excluding Russia from all possible formats. European policy to exclude Russia from all political platforms is unrealistic. So this is, I think, abracadabra, because how unrealistic? If Europe wants to kick them out, they will. And one thing is to leave G8, okay, understandable, it's hard, it's a tall ask, but to be kicked out of G20, that's an interesting development if that happens. This is the group, this is the forum that is run by 2 poles, China and United States, 2 poles of power. But do you think this perspective is real? Do you think it exists? We'll see, Mark. We can at least say about our position. It is very transparent, very clear. We think that political regime that started a big war in Europe, that continues to escalate, continues to create thousands of war crimes while fighting this war, and continuing to attack our civilian infrastructure, which technically can be classified as an effort to create additional suffering for the populace of a big European country. That actually has all signs of a genocide definition. So I think Russia, with this regime, under this regime, should be excluded from any international organization, including the Postal Stamp Society, and especially from the ones that can discuss things and can influence big events in the world, because politics has to have some morality in it. You cannot sit down and negotiate with a cannibal who is frying children for his breakfast every morning and find a platform to talk to him about doing something together. More and more countries are adopting resolutions that Putin's regime is a terrorist regime, that Russian Federation is run by a terrorist regime, is a terrorist country. Now Poland also joined that group. And I hope that our president will give the harshest marks to Russian behavior and will call upon our allies and countries of G20 to make that decision. And also, it's interesting if they can call upon India, because India is also leading the summit, and India is a peculiar country. Will be interesting to see how they behave and what position they take, because India is one of the countries that has an ethical part prominently visible in their politics. So how would they match that morality and this ethics that they're proud of with their economic interests? So it will be interesting to see how that unfolds in that summit. Guys who just said that they're eager to waste 100 million people to let them die of hunger in Northern Africa. It will be interesting to see how other countries vote on that. In my opinion, they should be kicked out of any international organization. This indeed should lead to more international isolations, because all these organizations, they will need to reevaluate, including the G20. Some of them are official, some of them are non-formal organizations. And I agree they should shut Putin's regime down from anything, not even playing chess, not even any economic or anything, any other relation. They should be put in the corner and disconnected from any other country. They should be in complete isolation, because after everything that happened, they're still escalating. They're still not accepting the guilt for the horrors they unleashed on peoples of Europe. They're still escalating. So countries of G20 should give a proper grade to these actions, and I hope they come to right conclusions. Another thing is economy and politics, and I understand that's sometimes difficult to make the right statement, but basically, when you're dealing with a cannibal, me, Olexiy Arestovich, giving my personal opinion that you should not be negotiating with a cannibal as long as he is the cannibal. So, and also, that last thing I wanted to touch, one of the missiles was shot down. It fell on the territory of Moldova. And I understand they even withdrew their ambassador to Russia. And I understand they're a small country, they don't have their army, they rely on their allies for protection. And I understand Moscow has a very peculiar influence, and they have their own party through that asshole Shore and his wife Jasmine that are trying to rattle the political situation in Moldova. But regardless, positions of Georgia, positions of Moldova in that situation, in the war that's going on for the 9th month already, do you think that can be it is somewhat a defensible position? How do you gauge their current stance? Well, Moldova cannot resolve their Transnistria problem as a normal country would, using military, economic, and diplomatic forces, because the potential of two possible warring sides is very different. Moldova was not developing their military tasks, military personnel, military structures at all, and there is no way for them to prevail in a conflict with so-called Transnistria that was supported all the time by Russian Federation. So their only way for them to prevail in such a conflict would be to rely on help either from the Western allies or from Ukraine. And in order to get that help, one needs to ask for that help. The falling of missile, the fact that it fell in their territory, is not, of course, a serious threat to Moldova. But in general, such an event, or even the whole war in Ukraine and Russian invasion into Ukraine, is a serious threat for Moldova, including the fact that their electricity is coming from Ukraine. So if Russia destroys that, they are sitting without electricity. And I think they should be talking to Ukraine more because we are definitely a key to resolving their issues. But for that, they need to make a decision, a sovereign decision by the government of Moldova in a difficult situation when Moldovan opposition very often officially takes Russian position and pro-Russian position in any heated argument. And as long as Moldova has no potential to overcome that physically, they will continue maneuvering, they will continue wiggling in the real politics situation. But Moldova needs to understand that Ukraine is a brotherly nation next to you. We value our relations with you and we support your territorial integrity. And if the time comes when you need our help and you come to us for help, please do. We'll be glad to provide additional help to you guys and side with you. All right. Almost 420,000 watching us live, 140,000 clicked the like button. Apologies for the winter time. I understand it was a little too late for some of you. Continue posting links to that stream so those who missed it live can watch it in recording. And one last thing is we got our new t-shirt designs in our merch store. Look how we played with some of the portraits, the last two on the black background. Feygin and Arestovich, these are more likely an image, not exactly a self-aggrandizement here. These are just symbols. And two others before that to the right. These are interesting ones. This is a very peculiar way of drawing with geometric figures. And the artist is Anton Hrupin. He's actually from Kramatorsk himself. He was creating a lot of postal stamps. He's got a lot of designs that were published for the Post of Ukraine. And this is the design he made for us. These geometric styles are new. Two black backgrounds. Those are done by an artist from the occupied territory, so we cannot give her details until Ukraine liberates that part of the country, so we'll leave her anonymous. But Anton Hrupin, here are his works. Okay, that's it for today. We continue our project, Feigin and Arestovich. Please come to our merch stores, European, American, buy t-shirts, mugs, continue supporting the victims of this war. We're also trying to help, once again, one of the families we aided initially. They're now in Sweden getting treatment, and every time, we get new contacts, it takes time to evaluate the people are right, and I think we'll help one boy Bogdan again this week, so we'll see how it works. Okay, tomorrow 10 p.m. Kiev, 11 Moscow, we're doing another stream, and Privateer Station will have us about 12 to 15 hours later on their station. See you all. Goodbye.